Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to Faster Masters Rowing Radio, where having a rowing coach only makes you better, and following a program gives you a true pathway to becoming a confident rower who's respected by your peers. You can become the athlete you want to row with. I'm Rebecca Caroe, and I'm joined by Marlene Royle.
Hello, Rebecca, and hello to our Faster Masters Rowing Radio audience.
I can't believe it. It's nearly the middle of September already.
I know. It's
Our
kind of
clocks
shocking.
change.
Oh, really?
We have 2 weeks, yeah, and then 1 week, 10 days, and our clocks change.
Well, we fall back to, but I think we have a little bit more time. But
yeah,
for
October.
I know, but for people in our audience, you have to remember, like Rebecca and I, we coordinate Eastern time and New Zealand time and European time, and they don't all change time at the same time. So it gets a little wild sometimes.
It does. We've had some spectacular mess ups in the past. But as I said in an email that will go out later this week, my second favorite website in the world is worldtimebuddy.com because it allows you to align time zones.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, like you can put in you got 3 people you've got to get on a Zoom call. Boom, boom, boom. You put in their cities. You can get everybody like 4 p.m. in the afternoon seems to be the magic time. I swear. But
I think everyone's got fed up with work by 4 p.m.
Yes.
Now, this week, the podcast is sponsored by the Sculling Intensive course. It's a week of virtual tuition led by me, Rebecca Caroe. It's all done virtually, so you have nightly Zooms and daily lesson plans. The course is designed for people who want more confidence in a single scull. This course will guide you through the full stroke cycle from finish to catch and back again, and it's only about single sculling technique. Do check your inbox. I will be sending out some messages about it. If you're on our newsletter, there's a link there to join. It is going to be awesome. And in the past week since we announced it, I have unilaterally decided, in consultation with Marlene, that we're going to do it twice. So it's the same course, but I'm going to deliver the Zooms in the European time zone later on in October. So the original time is 8 p.m. Eastern, which is like 1 a.m. in Europe. So for that reason, we thought we'd redo it. So the course is the same, but the Zooms for anyone who's in the European time zone will run around 10 days later. And it's all explained on the website. Spaces are limited, but I'm really looking forward to welcoming a load of people onto this course. It is based on the exact course that I teach on the water, and it's a real goodie. It'll give you the confidence that you really need to get going in your single. If you already think you're quite good and you worry that perhaps you haven't got the basics right, and you'll remember that Marlene and I talk often about how to move with the boat and how to adjust your movements to reflect what's happening around you so that you're at one with the machine, the boat. This might be a good opportunity for you to come back and learn the basics in a really robust framework. So that's our sponsor this week.
Rebecca, I think that sounds so awesome. And just to throw my 2 cents in here, having rowed for a long time, like I started in 1977, I have found through my rowing career that every 5 or 6 years, you've got to do a major reset, right? And you've got to do a major reset and you've got to go back to the basics and relearn the basics and spend some time on the basics, because no matter how long you've rowed, you're going to get to a certain point in your technique that if you don't correct something, you're not going to go to the next level. And I think that's what our Sculling Intensive is aimed at here. Like, you might be new, you might need a refresher, and you've got to back up and say, okay, let me go back to the basics again. Let's talk about it, get some feedback. Boom, this is going to help me go to the next level. Whether you're a novice going into intermediate or whether you're pretty experienced, I've learned to row 6 times over again from the beginning. So it's important. It's important because if you've got something you're stuck on and you're challenging, you've got to go back to the basics and you've got to relearn the basics so that you can move past that element. And so it's really valuable to do this every couple of years.
Thank you for the endorsement, and too true. Go back to basics is the solution to an awful lot of rowing problems. Now, this past week, apart from me setting up the Sculling Intensive, I am heading off to the New Zealand Masters Rowing Championships today. So the trailer is loaded. We had some great insights into self-organization to make sure that the big boats got de-rigged first, because they go on the top of the trailer, and obviously you can't load the lower ones. And another reflection on the unbelievable organizational skill of the people who do our trailer loading diagram. And someone who will remain nameless, who wrote the whole thing out on a whiteboard with a list of every boat and little check marks to put in when you had loaded those riggers and the oars that go with them, so that and the seats, because
I was going to say, what about the seats?
So that was much appreciated.
Well, that sounds like a great list of best practices for trailer loading. I mean, the last thing you want is to get to your regatta and you don't have a seat or foot stretcher or a rigger. That's not going to fly, right? So
it was quite funny. Someone had this last minute panic go, where are the spare foot stretchers for the men's 8? I was like, why has the men's 8 got spare foot stretchers? Like, I don't know.
No. Oh dear. Oh my God.
Steal them out of another boat.
All these things that come into your mind when you're heading to your championship race, right? Right. I mean, when people get nervous, like weird things happen, right? Weird things happen. Things that never happen in practice happen on race day. So write everything down, ladies and gentlemen. Write it down. Make a diagram. Make a checklist. Don't have to make big decisions when you're excited. So
true.
So my past week, Rebecca's heading off to their championships, and we're gonna put Faster Masters, Rebecca's club, on the map. So we're happy about that. And actually, for people who do a lot of video and save video and video archives, I've used a program for quite a number of years, and that program is now going out of business. Coach's Eye is an app that many rowing people have used for many, many years, and they've decided not to support the app anymore as of today. So, when you've had good footage or valuable footage that you've saved over the years, we have to move that to another platform now. So my last 2 weeks has been going through a lot of titles and saving the stuff that I really feel was historically important and instructionally important, and saving that onto a different platform. So it's a great review, but it is something that when you consider what you're going to use as a platform and how you're going to save things and how you're going to archive things, I never really honestly guessed that this platform would disappear. I've been using it. We've been using it for so many years. But that's the decision of the company. And but it's something to consider, how you save your data. Are you going to put it on a separate drive? Are you going to keep it somewhere where you think it's safe, where you have access to it? So I think these are always things to consider, because it really is nice to go back and see some of your athletes who maybe their first time in a single, or their, things that 5 or 6 years down the line, it's really cool for them to see this was your first row. And, those are things I didn't really want to delete. So that's a bit what I was doing the last couple weeks, and just wrap that all up this morning. So,
well done you. And my picture this week is Anya Hutton, who is in Dutch coastal quarters. I'm sorry I've cut her head off there, but they're huge smiles, and they're doing a great tour that she published a whole load of photographs, which was really nice to see. Now it's that time. Jess di Carlo, welcome to the podcast. It's Book of the Month episode.
Yay.
Hello. So the book this month is Mind Over Water, Craig Lambert. And this book was written in 98 or 99. and I've had it for a while and just never read it. If I knew how good it was, I would have read it sooner. But he's actually a really good writer too. I mean, like, just the way he describes rowing is it's just a joy to read, really. But he did some coxing when he went to college, and I think he was about 5'7" maybe, and so he figured he would, try to become a varsity sportsman through coxing, and it was just too rough. The schedule was just affecting his grades, so he put down rowing, and then picked it up again, like 85 maybe, and then he did sweep rowing for several years, and then he finally took the plunge and started sculling in a single. He actually went to Craftsbury to learn how to scull, which I thought was pretty cool. And the story, it's weaves in and out around the head of the Charles, which is why I wanted to save it for this time of year, because it's funny how, just when September 1st rolled around, it's just like the whole season, it felt like it shifted for me, and the weather changed, and here we are in head race season. So yeah, it's a really, really good book. I highly recommend it.
Well, and this is actually because it's so, this is also one of my favorite books, and I actually bought my copy from Craig Lambert in the cornfield of Putney, Vermont, at the Green Mountain Head, like back in 1999, when he first published this book, and he was selling them out of his car, and I was there at the Green Mountain Head in Vermont buying it, and I bought my copy straight from him. And I too, like, this book sat on my shelf for a long time before I read it the first time. But me and Jess have a lot of rowing books, so we don't read them all at once.
Yeah, it's just you don't know which one to pick.
Right. They kind of ferment for a while, but I read it a long, long time ago, probably around 2000. But last fall, I gave a copy of this book to one of my new rowers, who was really intrigued with the Charles, a new master's rower, really intrigued with the Charles. And I gave him a copy of this book. And I was like, I think you're really going to love this book, because it's so based on the head of the Charles. It's so based on being an older athlete, learning how to row. And I think one of the things I really liked about this book, you can tell me what you think, is he's a journalist by profession, and it's so well written, and it's so well written with historical perspective, but also insight. And you're just like, wow, like I totally relate to that.
Yeah.
I mean? Like, yeah, I can see this, and this preparation for the head of the Charles, or your first competition, he just takes the reader through it stroke by stroke.
The insight is what struck me. It's like sentence after sentence of just really insightful comments. And I mean, I could just open the book anywhere and just point my finger blindly, and I'm sure it would be like something amazing. So yeah, the part where he talked about that one time he started talking about coxing and steering a boat, steering an 8. And how, he was just thrown in as a novice, and the rowers who knew what they were doing were like mad at him because he wasn't calling out the set. Of course, it's like the same problems, but he talked about learning to sail in the basin, I guess. And he had that moment where he was like capturing the wind with his hand or something. I can't even remember what he said, but it just blew my mind. And yeah, but I it's about sailing, but it still applies to rowing somehow. Like, I don't know.
Well, the sensitivity to the water, but tell us about this, in the beginning, when he's at Harvard, right? So he's thinking to, his initial intention is to join a varsity crew, but as a coxswain, right? Because obviously he wasn't tall enough to be one of the rowers. And then what happens when everything goes black?
Oh yeah, it was mostly the very beginning of the book. The Great North East Blackout was 1965, which I don't know that much about it. Even having lived in that area, I don't remember hearing about it. But they were on the water and just everything went dark. And he talked about how they had to dock the boat, and like the coach had some sort of light or something, and somehow talked them through docking the boat. I mean, it was just, and that was just one story. Like there are several moments like that are just, I mean, it's just so beautiful. It's like poetic. I mean, it's very good.
You can almost smell the leaves turning in Boston, like when he writes this book, and then he goes on as a master's rower. He takes you through the whole process of learning how to row as a master's rower, learning how to row from a philosophical point of view, but also like, oh my God, I've got to do a double head of the Charles practice where I've got to row with the big guns on the river, and we're going to race the race one direction, stop, rest, and then we've got to do it back again, and all the anxieties and all the stuff that goes through his mind, like, oh my God, like I'm really training for a race. Can I do this? How do I do this? How do I do this stroke by stroke? And I think it's such a motivating, inspirational book for people, because, it just shows that's what masters rowing is all about. Like it's about you.
Yeah.
It's about the world. It's about getting out there on the river and like putting your oars in the water and moving the boat. Right. So,
yeah. And I thought, as far as reading goes, like there were so many parts, but I thought I would talk about the story where he somehow in 1986, I think he got, I guess, accidentally signed up for the championship double ahead of the Charles, and he was like just learning to scull. I don't think he had sculled a single yet, and it was him and his teammate. They were in this, like, he called it a tub. I don't know exactly what kind of boat it was, but
something wide, I think.
Yeah, they just, I mean, this is where like history of rowing is woven in this book too, because he just so happened to have been a member of Cambridge Boat Club, and of course there's like a ton of famous rowers there. And he was like, so one day him and his partner, his name was Tom Tiffany, I think, who was previously a coxswain. But anyhow, he says, we decided to get some advice from a master oarsman and met one morning with our friend Tiff Wood, having paddled our double to the Cambridge Boat Club dock. So he goes out in a double with Tiff Wood in the bow. And he said, from the very first stroke, I was in a different world. Magically, the boat set up steady as a rock and stayed set. And I mean, he said, rowing with Tiff, I suddenly became a highly competent oarsman. He was a classic example of the kind of teammate who makes the athletes around him better than they are. So, yeah, it was just, I mean, could you imagine, like what better person to get a lesson from, And it's just like some guy at your boat club, it's Tiff Wood.
Well, and Tom Tiffany actually was a friend of mine for many years, and Tom was he was a national team coxswain. He was a very, very high level coxswain, and so he was rowing with Craig. They were rowing the double together. But of course, to bring Tiff Wood, at that time he lived in Boston, and then he moved out to Portland, Oregon, I think, where he lives now, I believe. Just to have those people around you in your milieu, it's just shows you how good it is just to get in a boat with a really experienced oarsman and feel what the boat feels like. It's such a great learning experience just to understand how they put the blade in the water, how the boat is set, how the rhythm of their stroke works. So, and Craig, he had all these mixed experiences, which, little by little build him to that head of the Charles race, which is really great.
Yeah, yeah, and like he did well. It's like totally. I mean, it's not like he won. He was 40. Whoops, he was like 47 at the time. So it's not like he won the race, but he did well. And just when you were talking, I thought of the one thing that he said in the book. He felt even towards when he was racing the single. So I think it was 95. When he raced the single, and he said that he felt like an outsider, like he wasn't as good as these other people. I mean, he was like, not even on a college team, he said, let alone a national team. But he said, I just felt like an outsider, but he said the whole time, all I had to do was take the opportunity, and I fit in just like everybody else. And that's more than anything is one thing I love about rowing.
Yes.
Like you're just a part of the club. Just do it. You belong there,
Yeah. Well, and it's all about, I mean, that's the challenge of the head of the Charles or any head race or any race whatsoever. I mean, it's racing. I always like to tell people, racing is very personal, and nobody knows, just somebody who's watching you externally, they don't know what this means to you, right? They don't know how you got there. They don't know, it's not about the number of the results. It's about how did you do compared to what you wanted to do, or did you accomplish what you wanted to accomplish? And that's the really cool thing about masters rowing, is that you can approach it at absolutely any level you want. Like maybe your goal is just to row 5K, period. Not for time, not even in a competition. Maybe that's a huge goal. Go row around the island, right? Or to come in the top 20% at a certain race. It's absolutely irrelevant. It's your personal goal, but they're all equally important. And Craig's book is super, and we hope everybody, if you're getting ready for the head of the Charles, like grab it and read it, right? Yeah.
It's my bow number. This is my best head of the Charles souvenir.
Number 2. You were number 2. Whoa.
Not in the championship doubles, I'd just like to point out.
Did you row? I rode champ doubles once, a long time ago. I only rode masters. Honestly, I'll confess to you, I've only rode one masters race in my entire life, and that was the masters double at the head of the Charles. But yeah, no, head of the Charles, to win head of the Charles, it's a wonderful, wonderful experience. To row it is even better. So
yeah.
Wow.
Jess, thank you. Great choice. And I'm going to dust down my copy and take it away with me. I might have a chance to read it between races. You never know. We'll see you next month.
Okay.
So this week, Marlene and I wanted to talk about how people find new stuff which they learn and then they want to take them into the boat. And you'll probably know so many different websites, podcasts like this, magazines that give you information about rowing and sculling and the entirety of the sport. And so what I thought we should talk about is, what do you do, Marlene, when you find new things? Because I'm sure you're still finding new things, or they're old things that you've forgotten and they come back again.
Well, yeah, all the time. I think, especially being a coach, I'm constantly scanning for good phrases, good insights, interviews, books. Like we were just talking, Mind Over Water. You go into Mind Over Water and you're like, wow, that like totally resonates with coaching masters or things like that. So I would say, as a student of rowing, it's a pretty ongoing process that you're always looking for something like, oh, okay, that was a really good interview with Chris Korzanowski, and I got some really cool tips on how Italians train there. I like that stuff, right? You make your notes. I would say have a great system of how you capture stuff. I mean, I think that's the first step is, however you do it, whether you're a paper-based person or you have a digital-based system, file folders, however you do it, create a place for those items to live in your world. Okay. It could be paper-based notebooks, file notebooks, envelopes, digital. It doesn't really matter. But I think when you come across something that's meaningful, you want to have a place where you save those links to that interview, or you want to have a place where you have snapped a scan of that page in the book that's got that phrase that you want to remember. So just starting from the beginning, having a place to capture that can serve as your reference archive, and then you can, because don't try to remember this stuff. You will not. Don't remember it. Keep it in a trusted place where you can refer to it and give it a good name. Like, like there's one Chris Korzanowski interview that I really love where he reviews a lot of training systems of international crews. So like, I'm going to call that link Chris Korzanowski's really good talk about international training, or, something that is going to tell me, that's what he's talking about there. So give it a good name and put it in a secure place. You don't necessarily have to organize it, but like keep it all in one place so that you remind yourself, I want to read this book, or this is Mind Over Water, page 100. Even if it's not there, you've made yourself a little note that Mind Over Water, page 100 has something that I need to reference again. So that's what I try to do. And then hopefully when I discover a little tidbit here and there, I try to bring it into the next coaching session that I do, so that I try to put it into practice, and then I see, does it work or it doesn't work? Like people went, oh wow, that's a great way to describe this, or people look at you and go, well, okay, they're still doing the same, didn't make any changes. So putting it into practice, keeping your notes in a secure place where you know where it is, even if it's not particularly organized, just batch it all together and you know where it is. And try to check back with stuff. I mean, if it's sitting there for months and months, it's probably not going to help your coaching or your training. But if you check in with your list once a month and say like, oh, okay, well, that's what I need now. You're going to identify I've been working on this. Oh, this might help me. I think you always want to look and see like what's on your mind, and this is what I need to work on now. And oh, you know what? I happen to save somebody's comments about this. So I'm sort of organic about it in this sense. But
sitting on the sofa on a rainy Sunday afternoon and reviewing your notes is actually, for me, a really fun activity. Like, oh yeah, I'd forgotten about that. And I say that a lot.
Yeah, me too. I mean, and I think, we're always, especially for faster masters materials and teaching material, we're researching a ton of stuff, and we archive stuff like, oh, this is going to be really good for a spring topic, or this is good for a fall, or I need this myself in the boat, right? I need to say, what did so and so write about feathering, and that's a great way. I think it's important as a coach to hear what other people have to say, because we always listen to ourselves and we get used to how we express things. And it's really important to hear how other people describe things. And it adds, like CB Sands Borer, world champion in the lightweight double twice for the US. And she's one of the main people who helps develop coaches at Community Rowing in Boston. To listen to her say how she learned the release being coached by Alan Rosenberg, like, it's awesome, right? And you're going like, yeah, it's the sound. It's not the mechanic, it's the sound, it's the lightness, it's the movement, and so really important, I think, for all of us as athletes and coaches, like, just listen to other people and like get that little tidbit, that little different perspective.
When you do get an idea and you think, I wonder if that will work, I mean, just because it works for someone else doesn't mean it'll work for you, which is fine. This is all about the process of learning and adapting and improving. And for us older athletes, as we age, we may quite possibly need to row somewhat differently than we did when we were younger and stronger or more flexible. And so when it comes to taking your new idea, it's very shiny and exciting. Take it into the boat, but think about how to apply it with first principles. So say it's a release thing, wonderful insight. What can you do to work out how to break down the stroke into a smaller part to practice this new thing on its own, if you can, or with the adjacent bits of the stroke? So if it's about the release, you might do something from half slide in the power phase through to the release, through to the blades being taken out of the water, and then feathered round to weight back on your feet. So approximately half the stroke cycle. But can you do something in that constrained prescribed area to learn this new thing? And then what can you do then to extend that and see if you can build it into your normal stroke? And that's a simple methodology. And there are lots of different ways of breaking down and trying things. As we've talked before, there are exaggeration exercises. There are isolation exercises, like I just described, where you just do one thing. There might be something that you just do when someone else is sitting the boat level for you. There might be you do it without feathering because that is a distraction. So there are different ways of doing it. So try it different ways for yourself and work out what works for you. And then all you have to do is decide, have I done it successfully? Have what I've just done match to what was in my head or what I read or saw? And that's much harder.
And
I
agree. Yeah.
I generally find, it's worth doing a drill at least 3 times in one outing before you kind of feel that you've really mastered the thing that you're trying to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that people underestimate the value of repetition. So they'll say, oh yeah, I did that drill. Okay, we'll do it again. Repetition is so important. I think of an art like ballet. That's full of repetition. We are rowing a repetitive cycle. It's repetition. So revisiting a drill at the beginning of your outing, in the middle of your outing, at the end of your outing, the next day, it's always going to, hopefully you're developing the skill. One thing I like to do, Rebecca, is ask if someone is, say, focusing on a particular element and, maybe they're having a little trouble with it. Maybe it isn't clear. I'll ask them, can you verbalize to me what you want to happen? Especially with like entry timing or release timing, I will ask them, just tell me what you want the blade to do. And that usually sets the stage that you can find out where is it in that motion that they're getting lost. If they're getting lost, because if they understand what they want to do, they're going to be able to verbalize, I want to do this. I want to start this. I want to do this. I'm going to place this in the water. This is what I'm listening for. Oftentimes, if somebody's having a timing issue, especially with blade work, they're going to start the description and they're going to stop at some point because that's where they get lost. And that's where the flaw is happening. So as between the coach and the athlete, that's where you have to bridge the gap from that point to where you complete the execution. Because if they understand what they want, that's going to encourage your hand or your blade or your body to meet that goal. And if you don't understand what the goal is, you're going to get lost in the movement at some point. So it's a really simple, informal thing, but it works. And if you're in an indoor camp setting, you can actually ask people to write it out. But, just sitting in a boat saying, tell me how do you go from here to here? Just what do you do? Like, what's your focus? And oftentimes you'll see where you need to bridge the gap in terms of what's going on, because there will be, if there's an error, there will be a point where the athlete gets lost, and that's where we have to bridge the gap.
And so the last thing in taking your new learnings into the boat is technique first and then power. There's absolutely no point in just doing the technique and leaving it at that. You've then got to test it under pressure. And under pressure, usually power is the pressure. Sometimes it's rating, but you've got to make it more and more challenging for yourself. And can you still execute? And don't worry if you can't. What you've worked out is that you can do it up to rate 24 and then you can't do it. Well, okay, well, there's your baseline. It gives you an accurate measure that for tomorrow, for your next outing, what can I do then to try and see if I can advance my skill? Can I do it at half pressure at 28, but only firm pressure at 24? So these are really simple techniques, and it is just a basic series of principles. And you can take this and use it for self-coaching. And self-coaching for any adult rower is a really useful part of your skill armory, because without it, you're always just sitting there going through the motions until someone external tells you what to do, which is fine if you're a school kid. But as an adult, I'd expect you to take some of the responsibility yourself to drive yourself, to improve yourself. And so this is a technique. How's that?
Really good. Yeah. So, and it's an ongoing process. So, I really encourage people, keep learning. As we get older, I think where if you maintain your fitness and your health, where you're going to make good gains in speed is by improving your technique, because you simply don't have the window of time to add hours and hours and hours of training, right? You have to get more efficient with your recovery, with your training. And where you can make big gains is improving your power application, improving your blade work. And this stuff takes work. It's not going to happen overnight. You have to work on it, and you have to understand what you're wanting. But I think it gives you big dividends in terms of boat speed. And as you get older, I really think you have to row even better.
I like that. A challenge that I will take up
this weekend.
This weekend, exactly. Well, so if there's been anything that you've heard today in the podcast which you think, that's useful, that's helpful, I can use that in my rowing, please join the podcast subscribers. You can make a small donation starting from $1 a month at fastermastersrowing.com/podcast. And it allows Marlene and myself to offset the costs of running the podcast through the year. So this has been part of Faster Masters Rowing Radio, the show dedicated to masters athletes who want fun, fitness, and confidence in their rowing. You can become a student of the sport by buying a Faster Masters Rowing program today at fastermastersrowing.com/join. See you next time.
Thank you, Rebecca. And we wish everybody at the Tired Swans Rowing Club a great regatta this weekend.
Well, thank you very much. I will pass your best wishes on. I suspect Simone's probably listening now.